Exercise 6, Straight and Level Flight.
Now, the aim of this exercise is to attain and maintain flight in a straight line and at a constant altitude.
This exercise will represent almost 90% of your flying. Once again, your horizon will be your primary reference, and it is really important that we maintain balanced flight. The way that we will do this is by using the kick and pull method. If the aircraft is out of balance, kick the ball gently into the centre and use aileron to keep the wings level. How much rudder is required is shown on the slip indicator.
Now let's ask the question, what is straight flight? Straight flight is when the aircraft's wings are level and we are not turning. This can be achieved by using small coordinated inputs to the rudder and the ailerons. However, when we are flying, we need to take into account that present wind may cause drift. We are going to fly our aircraft along this line shown on the screen. In no wind, the aircraft will follow the line. However, life is not easy and we will have a wind pushing us off track. This is where we need to make an adjustment and position the nose of the aircraft into the wind. The amount of adjustment required by putting the nose into the wind is made much easier by using 2 or more reference points. This dot is where we want to get to. The arrow to the left will be the direction in which the wind is coming from. Along the way we have a lake, we also have a building. These will be our reference points. We will keep these 2 reference points lined up with each other. If you see the 2 points moving like so, it indicates that you have not positioned the nose into the wind enough. However, if you see these 2 points moving like this, you have overcorrected. Now let's look at this from a top-down view. This here is our heading, and this is where we want to get to. However, with the wind, we will follow this line, known as the track made good. By adjusting our heading and setting a drift angle, we can keep the aircraft following the required track. Level flight is when the aircraft is not going up and down. The vertical speed indicator, or VSI for short, is reading 0, and the altimeter is a constant value. We are going to use the elevator to iron out any small bumps in the altitude, or if there is a trend occurring, we will use power to stop the slight climb or descent. If we are slightly descending, add some power, but remember, you will need to add some right rudder to counter the slipstream effect. If we are gently climbing, remove some of the power. We will now discuss flying the aircraft at different speeds. If we want to fly at a different airspeed, we will follow this acronym, PAT. Power, Attitude, Hold, and Trim. We will use this for flying at either a faster or slower airspeed. Let's imagine for the next 2 scenarios we are flying with an airspeed of 70 knots at 4,200 RPM in our C-42 Microlight, which has an 80 horsepower Rotax engine. For our first scenario, we're going to accelerate from 70 knots to 80. If all we do is increase the power, we will fly 80 knots, but that will only be temporary. The nose will rise up and we'll enter a climb. Our speed will then slowly come back down to 70 knots. Let's now lower the nose, which will reduce the angle of attack. This will reduce our lift and our drag. However, if we only lower the nose, the aircraft will accelerate to our desired airspeed, but we will be descending. This is why we need to complement this with some power. This is where the acronym comes in that we discussed earlier. We're first going to add some power, remember adding a bit of right rudder, lower the nose, using the horizon once again as our primary reference. Hold the aircraft's nose with the lower nose attitude, and finally trim out the forward pressure in the stick. Do this to the point you can release the stick and the nose stays where it is. Stop gripping the stick like you are trying to strangle the aircraft. The aircraft is not trying to kill you. Now, monitor your airspeed and altitude. Are you going too fast? If so, your nose may be too low. And are you still climbing? You might have too much power. Simply either raise the nose slightly or reduce the power. The horizon should be higher up your screen and the aircraft should be comfortably cruising at 80 knots without any other input to the controls. Let's now slow down from 70 knots to 60. Reducing the power will bring us into a descent once again. We will have a temporary airspeed change, this time reducing, but once in the descent, our airspeed will increase back up to 70 knots. Raising the nose will put us into a gentle climb, this time at 60 knots or lower. Reduce the power and raise the nose. Hold the new nose attitude at 60 knots and trim all of the pressure out of the stick. Once again, monitor your airspeed and altitude. If you're going too slow, lower the nose. And are you descending? If so, add some power. This time your nose will have a much higher nose attitude, and if you have done it correctly, you'll be cruising at 60 knots, hands off. Once again, we are going to discuss airmanship, and this time we're going to improve our lookout and introduce en route checks. Look out for traffic as usual, but this time, when letting your instructor know where the traffic is, use a clock face, with 12 o'clock being the nose of the aircraft. Is the traffic higher than you? Is the traffic lower than you? And is it conflicting, which means is it going to hit you? Start from one side of the cockpit window and look outside the aircraft for other traffic. Keep your eyes in one section for a couple of seconds. Move along to the next section, look there for a couple of seconds and then move along. Do the same until you have reached the other side of the cockpit window, and then repeat from the other side. What you are doing is giving your eyes a chance to adjust and see something moving against the solid background. If traffic is staying at the same point on your screen, at the same level, it is on a collision course with you, unless it is flying away. And now we will talk about en route checks. These are to be done every 10 to 15 minutes whilst flying. We're going to use our FRIDA check, however some schools and pilots use life checks. FRIDA stands for fuel, do we have enough fuel to carry on, and do we have enough for a reserve? Make sure that we haven't been leaking fuel since departure. Radio, are we on the correct frequency? Or have we reduced the volume on our radio? Engine, how are the temperatures and pressures? Are we within limits? Direction, what is our direction and are you lost? And finally, altitude, have you deviated from your planned altitude? You really don't want to bimble into controlled airspace. Now that's the brief for straight and level flight. If you have any questions, once again, please leave them in the comments section below. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel for more content. Fly safe.